So hey guys, this week on Wood Heat Wednesday, we're going to talk about something probably not all that exciting, but I thought I would share some of my experiences. Hopefully this can help somebody else out, but thought I would talk about insurance related around wood stoves. So if you're someone that's just thinking about getting a wood stove, the very first thing I do before you get anything in motion is contact your insurance company. Get a discussion open, get a rough quote on how much something's going to cost so you can address some of these things early on. I'll tell you what, when we were originally looking at getting a wood stove installed at our place right now, we had to jump through a lot of different hoops. We had plans of at one point putting a wood stove in our garage, having that all duct into our furnace because those two walls were right there. But our insurance company wanted nothing to do with that. Open flame in the garage with vehicles or fuel source in there. I even offered up saying, hey, once we frame up a room, steel studs, cement board, all that. They still didn't want nothing to do with that. So then we started looking at outdoor furnaces, basically the same concept that we have now, without like all the plumbing and the heating like you have with a boiler. Works just like what we got, a ductwork type setup, but they classified those stoves as outdoor boilers. So those had to be a minimum of 200 feet away from the house, and being that those worked off forced air that connected into your ductwork, at that range it was just too much heat loss. It just wouldn't be worth the effort. So we had to go back and forth and talk with them and make sure we were fitting what they required, and then we tried to exceed their standards. So one day if we ever decide to sell our house, it's not going to be an issue for the next person that's coming to move in. Prices on insurance can greatly vary. I know even when we were looking at moving out to our place, being that we're more than 15 miles away from a fire station, being with one of the big guys, man, prices went way up. We went with a smaller company that had a real good, reputable, reputation of making sure they actually cut checks if a claim ever had to get put in. Had a lot of good positive feedback on them, and there was a night and day difference on the price between one of the big guys and the insurance company that we ended up selecting. However, with that company, there's a reason. They really cross their T's and dot their I's. When we went to go get our wood stove installed, they made us jump through a lot of different hoops. After we got our stove installed, they came out and they inspected everything. They checked measurements, made sure we had minimum requirements. They went up on the roof, make sure our chimney was at the proper height, and really came through and checked things off. However, with our neighbor, when they put a stove into their place, they called and they didn't even come out and take a picture of it, even ask for the name. They said, oh great, okay, we made an adjustment. So things can really vary from one company to another. So sometimes insurance companies can be pretty interesting too on how they do certain things. You go out and buy any stove from a store, they go through a UL listing that makes sure those stoves meet certain requirements, or that's how this defines those. X amount of distance away from a combustible wall, and there's some standards that go along with that. That way, if you're running your wood stove and you meet those or exceed those requirements, you should be safe. So there shouldn't be any worries. So with getting our stove installed, our stove required X amount of distance, and the insurance company actually required a different requirement. In our case, it was a smaller distance that our insurance company required. So we only required 19. So we found whatever the larger of the two were and made sure we exceeded those by a little bit to make sure there is no issue. So if the stove was a larger distance, required to be away from the wall, we went with that option. If the insurance was larger on something else, we went with that. So we always made sure that we exceeded everything. One other thing I strongly recommend is hanging on to the information. If you end up doing like a pre-manufactured chimney, put in a different wood stove, hang on to that material and know it pretty well. We were chatting one day with one of our neighbors. It just happened to be a conversation that came up. I said, oh, our insurance company's gonna drop us. They came out, they were checking something else. They noticed some white on the stove, and they said we were overheating or overfiring our stove, and they're gonna drop us from that. Well, we went and grabbed his manual and looked up some of that information, and sure enough, it said right inside that manual that don't be alarmed if you see white happening in this particular the stove. So he was able to take that information, go back to the insurance company, and then they end up changing their mind. They just recommended him come back in there with a little bit of stove paint and touch things up. So things can greatly vary from company to company on their requirements, the prices. Really worth a little bit of effort to shop around from time to time. Insurance is one of those things that's oftentimes pretty easy just to get and then just forget about it. But you can definitely save yourself some pretty good money shopping around time to time and reevaluating those things. So I'd really recommend opening up a conversation if you're thinking about getting a wood stove in your place early on. That way you can identify and make sure you don't end up getting something installed, find out you don't meet their requirements, and potentially are going to get dropped or in the scramble of trying to find a new stove. Insurance, I think, is a pretty important thing with wood. Most common fires in houses happen in the kitchen, and the second common is related around heat, whether that's oil, propane, natural gas. Just the heating sources generally tend to be the second thing. So sometimes insurance companies are real sticklers about that. So just wanted to, I guess, bring up this topic a little bit. I'm hoping this can help someone out, save someone a little bit of a headache and trouble just by thinking about insurance before you even think about getting that wood stove. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.